The air in the grand hall of the convention center was thick with tension. A massive crowd had gathered for what was expected to be a historic speech, one that would shape the direction of America's future. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation as people from all walks of life filled the space, their eyes glued to the stage. Cameras flashed from every corner, capturing every movement of the prominent figures who stood at the podium. The debate of the century was about to unfold, and at the center of it stood former President Donald Trump. The event was a major political rally, one where Donald Trump had been invited to deliver a keynote address. His speech was expected to focus on the issues facing America, from the economy to immigration, to his vision for the future of the country. But as always, Trump's words would not be without controversy. The presence of a vocal liberal activist, Olivia Carter, added an extra layer of complexity to the day's proceedings. Olivia had become known for her strong opposition to Trump's policies during his time in office, often clashing with his supporters on social media and in public forums. Olivia was seated near the front, wearing a dark blue blazer with her arms crossed, a skeptical expression on her face. She was a fierce advocate for progressive causes, known for her unapologetic stance on climate change, social justice, and government transparency. She had been invited to the event as a representative of the liberal community, with the hope that her presence would provide a balanced view in the face of Trump's powerful conservative following. The crowd settled into an expectant silence as the event organizers introduced Trump. The atmosphere was charged with energy, the room filled with applause and cheers as the former president took the stage. He stood tall, wearing a tailored navy suit with his signature red tie, his expression as confident as ever. The crowd erupted in excitement, a sea of red hats and signs waving in the air. Trump stepped up to the podium, his eyes scanning the room as the cheers began to quiet down. He was ready. This was his moment to speak directly to the people of America, to share his vision for the country, and to silence any doubters who still questioned his relevance. The lights above him glinted off the polished wood of the podium, casting a soft glow on his face. The moment was electric. Thank you all, Trump began, his voice deep and commanding. It's great to be here with you today. You are the backbone of this country. The people who work hard, who love America, and who fight every day to make this nation the greatest in the world. The crowd erupted in applause once more, and Trump let the moment breathe, his expression turning serious. He had their attention, and he wasn't going to waste it. As you all know, America is facing a critical moment in its history, Trump continued, his tone growing more intense. We've seen the damage caused by years of failed policies, by people who don't care about the working class, who only care about their own power. And I'm here to tell you, we can't let that continue. We need strong leadership to make America great again. But just as Trump was about to continue, a voice rang out from the crowd, Olivia Carter. She stood up, raising her hand as if to make a point. The crowd immediately turned their attention to her, and a murmur of confusion spread throughout the room. Olivia was known for speaking her mind, but few had expected her to interrupt Trump during such an important moment. Mr. Trump, Olivia called out, her voice sharp and unwavering. You speak of making America great again, but what about the damage you've done to the environment, the attacks on human rights, and the policies that have torn this country apart? You cannot claim to represent the people while pushing an agenda that harms so many. The room fell into a stunned silence. No one had expected this kind of confrontation, and Trump supporters shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some murmured in disapproval, while others looked at Trump, waiting for his response. Trump's eyes narrowed as he focused on Olivia, his face unreadable for a moment. Then, without missing a beat, he responded, his voice calm but full of authority. Olivia, I appreciate your opinion, but let's get one thing straight, Trump said, his voice booming across the hall. I didn't spend 4 years in office to push policies that hurt America. I worked hard to bring jobs back, to make sure our borders were secure, and to strengthen the economy. What you and your progressive friends don't understand is that the real damage has been caused by the people who sold out our country. The ones who sold out to foreign governments, to special interests, and who failed to stand up for the American people. The crowd was divided. Some cheered. Others were still trying to process the confrontation. Olivia stood firm, not backing down, her arms still crossed as she watched Trump. She was used to being challenged, but there was something about Trump's words that struck a nerve. "Mr. Trump," Olivia said, her voice now more measured but still filled with conviction, "you can talk about your success all you want, but let's not forget the damage your rhetoric caused. You divided this country, sowed hatred, and let people believe that discrimination and injustice were acceptable. You had the chance to bring us together, but instead, you only deepened the divide." The tension in the room grew even thicker. People on both sides of the political spectrum were on edge, eager to see how this confrontation would unfold. Trump leaned into the podium, his eyes locked on Olivia. "You want to talk about division?" Trump responded, his voice rising slightly. "I didn't divide this country. The division was there long before I ever entered the picture. What I did was give the forgotten people a voice. The working-class Americans, the ones who've been overlooked by politicians for years. They finally had someone who cared about their future." The crowd erupted into applause once again, but Olivia wasn't finished. She knew that her words could not be taken lightly, and she pressed on. "I didn't say you didn't care about some people," Olivia retorted, "but the policies you pushed were harmful to those who need our support the most. The environment, social justice, healthcare. Those issues can't be ignored, and your inability to address them shows just how out of touch you really are." Trump took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing. This was it, the moment he had prepared for. He wasn't about to let Olivia or anyone else tear down his record. "Let me make this clear," Trump said, his voice now calm but firm. "I stand for the people who believe in this country. The people who know that America's greatness doesn't come from special interests or bureaucratic systems. It comes from the heart of every American citizen who works hard and loves this country. You can call it division, but I call it strength. And that's what this country needs right now." The hall was electrified by his words. The audience could feel the weight of the moment, as Trump's powerful speech shut down Olivia's accusations and left her struggling to find a response. For a brief moment, there was nothing but silence in the room, broken only by the sound of applause from the supporters who had heard what they needed to hear. The applause echoed through the hall as Donald Trump's powerful words hung in the air. Olivia Carter, the liberal activist, was momentarily taken aback. She had come to challenge Trump's views and expose what she believed were the flaws in his policies. But now, as the crowd roared in approval of Trump's response, she felt the weight of her own words falling short. She had always prided herself on her ability to speak truth to power, to stand her ground in front of the most formidable figures in politics. Yet in this moment, the truth she had so confidently brought to the table seemed drowned out by Trump's fiery rhetoric and the overwhelming support from his loyal followers. Olivia's heart raced. She knew she had to respond, that this was her moment to push back, to make sure her message was heard. But there was something in the air now, something that made her pause, something that suggested the crowd had already made up their mind. The doubt crept in, but she wouldn't let it stop her. "Mr. Trump," Olivia began, her voice unwavering, though her palms were sweaty. "You talk about strength, but what about compassion? What about the people who have suffered under your policies? You can't ignore them just because they don't fit into your idealized version of America." Trump's face was calm, but there was a fire in his eyes. He wasn't about to let Olivia get the last word. "Compassion?" he asked, his tone laced with mockery. "I've done more for the American people than any of your so-called progressive leaders have. They talk about helping people, but they don't get their hands dirty. They don't take action. I built an economy that worked for the people, not for special interests. I brought jobs back to America. What have you done, Olivia? Talk is cheap." The crowd roared again, their cheers echoing in the hall. Trump supporters were energized, feeding off his words, but Olivia was not going to back down. She had worked too hard for her beliefs, and too many lives were at stake for her to let this go unchallenged. You can't just keep throwing around empty slogans, Olivia shot back. The truth is, under your administration, we saw a rise in hate crimes, attacks on marginalized communities, and a disregard for the planet. How can you stand there and claim to represent the people when you've let this country slip backward? The atmosphere in the room grew even more charged. The divide between the two sides couldn't have been clearer. On one hand, Trump supporters, waving their signs and chanting, felt the energy of a political figure who had always spoken their language, someone who wasn't afraid to go against the establishment. On the other hand, Olivia's supporters, who were few but resolute, stood firm in their belief that a change was needed. They wanted a leader who would fight for equality, for the planet, for the vulnerable. Trump looked at Olivia with a mixture of pity and annoyance. You talk about hate crimes, but you don't talk about the criminals pouring over our borders. You don't talk about the dangers they bring. You don't talk about the people who've been left behind because of your failed policies. I'll tell you what, Olivia, people are tired of listening to the same tired arguments from people like you. He took a step toward the microphone, his posture commanding. The American people don't want to hear about division. They want action. They want someone who is going to make their country great again, who is going to fight for the working class, not cater to the elites who have been running this country into the ground. His words struck a chord with his supporters, who erupted into applause. Olivia, however, stood firm, her gaze unyielding. She couldn't let this moment slip away. She took a deep breath, determined to cut through the noise, to speak the truth that she believed would resonate. But what about the children who have been separated from their parents at the border? Olivia asked, her voice rising with emotion. What about the people who've been silenced, the communities that have been ignored, the climate that's been destroyed by your administration's disregard for science and the environment? The room quieted, a hush falling over the crowd. Trump supporters were waiting for his response, while Olivia's supporters, though outnumbered, were watching with bated breath, hoping that her words would strike at the heart of the issue. Trump's face hardened and his eyes narrowed. You want to talk about families being separated? What about the families that have been torn apart by crime, by drugs, by illegal immigration? What about the people whose lives have been ruined by policies that allow criminals to roam free? I don't need to justify my actions to you, Olivia. The truth is, I've done what was necessary to keep America safe, to make America strong. And if that means making tough decisions, so be it. He paused, letting his words sink in. I've made this country stronger, safer, and more prosperous. And I'll continue to do so, no matter how many people like you try to tear it down. The tension in the room was palpable. Trump's words were bold, unwavering, and confident. His supporters were on their feet, cheering, while Olivia, though clearly shaken, stood her ground. Mr. Trump, she said, her voice filled with resolve, you may have made the country stronger for some, but you've torn apart the fabric of what makes America truly great. It's not just about power or money. It's about compassion, justice, and the well-being of every single American, not just the ones who agree with you. Trump's eyes flashed, and the crowd grew restless, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. But then, with a single, sharp gesture, Trump raised his hand, signaling the end of the exchange. He had made his point, and in the eyes of his supporters, it was a point well made. He turned to Olivia one last time, his voice steady and resolute. You'll see, Olivia, the American people have made their choice. They've seen through the rhetoric, through the lies, and they know who is fighting for them. You can talk all you want, but in the end, actions speak louder than words. As Trump stepped back from the podium, the room erupted once more in applause. The debate, while fierce and emotionally charged, had ended, and it was clear that Trump had won this round. Olivia stood silently, her heart pounding, but she knew the fight was far from over. It wasn't just about winning one argument. It was about making her voice heard and fighting for the future she believed in. The aftermath of the debate between Donald Trump and Olivia Carter rippled throughout the nation. News outlets were quick to dissect every word, every gesture, and every moment of the showdown. The intense exchange between the former president and the passionate activist had left an indelible mark on the political landscape, and its repercussions were felt by both sides. For Trump supporters, the event had been nothing short of a victory. His words, though controversial to some, had struck a chord with millions of Americans who felt forgotten by the political establishment. His defense of the working class, his hardline stance on immigration, and his vision for a stronger, more prosperous America had resonated deeply with his base. The crowd's enthusiastic response during the debate had been proof enough of Trump's enduring popularity among his supporters. They believed in his vision, and for many, his powerful speech was a reaffirmation of everything they had been fighting for. As Trump left the convention center, he was greeted by a chorus of cheers from his followers. The media, although critical of his rhetoric, couldn't ignore the fact that Trump had outmaneuvered his opponents, both in the debate and in the public eye. The backlash against Olivia's impassioned arguments was immediate. She was criticized by conservative pundits and Trump supporters who saw her as out of touch with the realities of American life. Her words, though well-intentioned, had failed to sway the crowd. In their eyes, Trump had spoken for the forgotten men and women of America, and no amount of liberal rhetoric could change that. But for Olivia, the aftermath of the debate was a mixed bag. She had been publicly humiliated in front of a national audience, her words drowned out by Trump's powerful rhetoric. Yet she knew that the fight for her ideals was far from over. Despite the defeat, Olivia remained resolute. She knew that the issues she had raised, the climate crisis, racial injustice, and the need for a more equitable society, were not going away. She had come into this debate to challenge Trump's worldview, to confront the policies that she believed had harmed millions of Americans, and she wouldn't back down just because of one failed confrontation. In the days that followed, Olivia received messages of support from like-minded individuals, from grassroots activists to progressive politicians who admired her courage in the face of such a powerful adversary. She had sparked a conversation that, despite Trump's dominance, would continue to unfold across the country. The debate had opened a window into the deep divisions that still existed in America, but it had also shown that the fight for justice and equality was not a battle that could be won in a single day. Olivia spent the following weeks working even harder, mobilizing her supporters and continuing to push for the policies she believed were necessary to secure a better future for all Americans. She spoke at rallies, attended meetings, and wrote articles in an effort to educate the public on the issues she cared about. Her voice, though momentarily silenced by the overwhelming force of Trump's popularity, began to echo louder in communities across the country. Meanwhile, Trump remained a dominant figure in American politics. His post-debate victory was seen by many as a sign of his enduring relevance. He continued to hold rallies and make public appearances, his every word and gesture scrutinized by the media. But the country was changing. The political landscape was shifting, and new voices were emerging. Trump's style, once seen as revolutionary, was now increasingly being questioned by those who were no longer willing to accept the status quo. Months passed, and the nation began to see a greater divide between those who rallied behind Trump's brand of politics and those who called for a more progressive, inclusive future. Trump's legacy was still being shaped, but it was clear that the path ahead was far from certain. Olivia, though bruised from the confrontation, saw the rise of a new generation of activists, young people who were passionate about climate action, social justice, and creating a government that truly represented all Americans. She knew that her fight was not just for herself, but for them as well. The work was far from over. The moral of the story was clear. The political battle between Donald Trump and Olivia Carter was not just about one debate, one speech, or one moment of confrontation. It was about the broader, ongoing struggle for the soul of the nation. It was about the tension between two visions for America. The vision of a country where strength and security were prioritized above all else, and the vision of a country where compassion, equality, and justice were the guiding principles. In the end, the debate had been a microcosm of the larger political divide in the country. Trump had shown his strength, his ability to rally his base, and his unyielding belief in his vision for America. Olivia had shown her courage, her unwavering commitment to the ideals she held dear, and her willingness to stand up to a figure who had dominated the political landscape for so long. Both had left the stage with their beliefs intact, but the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges. What the debate revealed was the true power of words and the responsibility that came with them. Trump's powerful speech had left a lasting impact, but so too had Olivia's words. Even if they had not been heard by everyone in the moment, the fight for America's future was not going to be won by any one person or one speech. It would take a collective effort, a commitment from people on both sides of the political spectrum to come together and find common ground, to address the issues that were tearing the country apart, and to build a future where every American could thrive. In the end, the true strength of a nation lies not just in the power of its leaders, but in the power of its people to shape the future with their actions, their words, and their unwavering commitment to what they believe is right.